Hi, I'm Katie Dutcher from Flourish and Bloom and Monterey Bay Meditation Studio. And today I want to just talk about one of my favorite metaphors that's come up in my teaching again and again and again. And I'm sure that I did not invent or totally create this from scratch, but I do really love it. And so I'll describe it here and then I'll kind of talk about what it means for me. And so, if you can picture it, picture a path that winds through a woods. Woods has trees and brush and other things, but this path winds right through it, moving from one place to another place as paths do. Picture this path as really well defined, easy to follow, so that when you enter this forest, there's almost no question that this is the path you would take. And if you think about a path like this, it it has been created, um, maybe not just in one big act, right? Sometimes nowadays, if you're in a park or something like that, yes, folks came through with a machine or some kind of thing and they carved this path. But the the trails that go through many woods are created by animals, by people, and they're created by walking that same path again and again and again. So every time that some being, some creature walks this path, they are just ever so slightly defining it, carving it, sustaining the fact that this path is here and that this path is the one to follow. Um, you could take other paths, right? But none of them is going to be as easy as this one that has been tread so many times. Um, if you want to change this path, maybe you realize that it's actually not the straightest path there, or it has some hills in it that you could go around. So for whatever reason you want to make a new path. Then just imagine how that's going to be. You can do it. Anyone can do it. But imagine how you might need to clear out some brush. You might need special tools to start at the beginning to cut some things out of the way. For certain, in order to make it an actual path, you're going to have to walk it many times, following the same path. And you're going to have to be intentional about it because remember, that old path is still there. It's going to take a long time to overgrow and become not the path, right? So this new path, each time you're going to have to intentionally choose, oh, I'm making this new path, and then walk this new path. And for the first long while, it might feel strange. It might feel, there's extra brush and things under your feet. There's just things going on there that aren't the case with the old easy to follow path. So why am I talking about this picture of a path, or this idea of the old path and the new path? This comes up a lot around um, anything that we want to change about ourselves. And first thing I want to say is I know that some of us, and maybe in general a lot of us, are often maybe very skewed into wanting to change ourselves, wanting things to be different than they are. And a part of mindfulness is awareness of things and acceptance of things as they are, right? So there's this quality of non-judgmentalness that it's really helpful to have, where we're not beating ourselves up for the way things are, but allowing it to be. Okay, so that's our foundation. Um, but of course, sometimes that awareness of this is how things are right now does, um, it kind of sparks some kind of change that we want to happen, right? Like, I'm aware that I have a lot of things that I'm perceiving as stress right now. And I'm aware that these things are weighing heavily on me, right? I'm aware of what I'm experiencing in my body. And all of a sudden, it sparks. Um, I want to start meditating each day so that I can find new ways of dealing with my stress. Okay, that's one example. So there's awareness there and no judging for the fact of having stress and not having a lot of ways to cope with it. And it sparks, but I would like this change, right? That happens in many areas of our life, right? I'm feeding myself in a certain way that has this certain effect. Okay, I recognize that. And then perhaps there's a spark of, I would like to offer myself another type of nourishment, and maybe my energy will change. Maybe my body will change. So you can see how this applies to many different things when it comes to changing habits and changing behavior. So the way it all relates is, and you probably already jumped to this already, is that each of the habits and the patterns that we have, even if they are feeling unhealthy or maladaptive or not skillful, in some way they are a point from point A to point B. They're a path, right? They may not be the best path, but that's the path, right? And everything that we have done up to now, choices we've made, situations we've been in, has contributed to carving the path that exists right now. And these are like habit patterns. When this happens, I feel this way, and then I do this thing, and it just all happens almost by default. That's because the path is there. It's so clear and easy because we've done it many, 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 many times, right? I deal with stress in a certain way every single time, whether it's good for me or not, but that's the way I know, right? So the other thing to mention too is that, again, the well-defined nature of this path also might be reflective of the fact that maybe this path predates you, meaning perhaps this was a path that was carved by other people, your father, your mother, your grandparents, and so you perhaps you inherited, in a sense, some of these patterns, these ways of being, or were taught these things. So what the reason I bring up the fact of this path is because, one, um, with any of these behaviors, no matter how ingrained, it is possible to make some shifts, right? Um, it is possible, and it takes time. So this is why I think that the path metaphor is helpful, because we can see very clearly that it's doable, and that it makes sense that it would be difficult to change something that has existed in a certain way for a long time. So why that's helpful, for me, it's helpful to be gentle with myself, to realize, yes, I am creating a new path, and it makes sense that this path is not always easy for me to follow, that sometimes along the way, especially when conditions are stormy, maybe I'm tired, maybe I'm really stressed out, then I return to that well-defined, easy old path, and I forget about the new one, right? But the next time I can choose again. I am carving this new path. So it helps me to think about the tenacity that is involved in this, the patience that it's really each time treading this path and creating it, um, that it's hard work. It acknowledges that it's hard work. So it takes perseverance, and along the way, compassion, self-compassion, kindness. If this feels hard, it isn't just you. It isn't just me. It is hard. It is worth it. It is doable, and it can be really difficult. So acknowledging this, and that is again part of the non-judgmental quality of how we're practicing. Um, Somebody then pointed out to me that these, and I love this bringing together of metaphor and of like real life, just the idea of neuroplasticity. Someone said, hey, this path is not just a metaphorical path, it's a real path in our brain. And that's true. We know, even if we're not super scientific minded, as I am not, we know that there are neural pathways in the brain, and that what neuroplasticity says is that the brain continues to change, um, even when we're older. It's not just little kids whose brains are changing and growing, that this is happening throughout our lives. And so some of this is happening in a way that is unintentional. It's just each thing that we do is strengthening the different pathways, and we're not necessarily aware of it. But we can take advantage of this fact of neuroplasticity, in that we can actually choose. And every time we choose new behaviors, we are strengthening new pathways in the brain. There's also a process called synaptic pruning that is always happening as well, meaning that the brain is it's smart, so smart. It's always kind of deleting or erasing old pathways that are no longer used and strengthening the pathways that are used. And so, knowing this, we can really be intentional about what we are doing. For me, I mentioned the part about that it's so challenging. That's one part of it. But the other part, I think that is just equally um, important, is that it means that everything matters. That even the smallest little choice that we might not give ourselves credit for, we have contributed to building this new pathway, right? Um, so a couple of things I want to just add about this, maybe some images that are helpful. So one is James Clear. I talk about him more and more. I really like a lot of the things he has to say about habit change, and behavior change. And he talks a lot about it being really small baby steps. So being patient and making just very small choices. And he also talks about identity, that in a sense it can be helpful to see change as identity. Like, I am a person who is healthy in my body and mind, and if I am holding that identity, then I more easily make choices that support that identity. And then another identity might be, I am someone who does the easiest thing and is maybe not so healthy in my body and mind. Um, with each choice that we make throughout the day, it can be helpful to think that we are casting votes for which identity is going to be the one that we work toward. And for me, this is really motivating to think of this, that it's not just, oh, should I really meditate today? Oh, should I really go for a walk? It doesn't really matter. It does actually matter. It's not the end of the world if it doesn't happen, but it is casting a vote. And it's many, 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 many votes that makes these identities, but each time we're just adding a little weight to which side we're ultimately um, moving toward. So I love that idea, this seeing that small choices are everywhere. And what that also points to is that, in fact, we are not really choosing to create a path or not, we're always creating a path. Our behavior, even the things that don't feel like choices, they feel like default, we're always on some path. And we're either like staying in the one that we were in and strengthening that one, or we're strengthening some other intentional path. So if that makes sense, it's just which one do we want. It's not should I be on a path or not. There's always a path. It's which one are we on. um, I could probably talk about this all day. I think it's interesting. I obviously love the metaphor because of the nature, you know, element of it, and how I can just keep, it's like I keep thinking of other things that contribute to this metaphor. The other thing that I think is helpful, and it's another nature metaphor, is the idea of moving a river, right? If we look at time lapse or some other way of charting a river, we know that rivers change their course, and they don't do it just like that. Maybe sometimes if there's like a huge storm, um, but usually it's a matter of carving the water, just water and sediment, just again and again and again as it runs over rock or whatever is underneath, that it carves in deeper and deeper. And then also that it can shift, and it shifts in these little micro elements. So it's again that same way of thinking about change, that it's in these very small pieces. I know for me, um, the thing to work with here is that it can seem kind of anticlimactic, right? We love big things. Now I'm gonna do this, or this big life changing epiphany, and that's helpful for sparking change. But usually we find that sustained change that actually makes a big difference is something that is just little every day. So that's where I would like um, to leave us with just this, hopefully some motivation and encouragement with whatever you're feeling like is new for you or that you want to be beginning, that you can do it. You can make small changes, and over a long period of time you can make big changes. These will definitely stack up. Along the way, just knowing that it's normal that sometimes you creep back to this very clearly defined old path. Okay, you notice it, and then the next time you can manage it, you work on carving that new path again. No big deal, no judgment, no criticism, just knowing that this is part of the process. So as always, I would love to hear your own thoughts about this, how this applies, perhaps to you, or maybe if you have anything to add or to change about this. You can always comment wherever you see this, whether it's on Facebook or YouTube. You can send me an email, hello@katiedutcher.com. And if there are ways that you are wanting to get started and not sure like where to begin, whether it's starting a meditation practice or some other way that you are wanting to move more in the direction of well-being, please know that I would love to help with this. And whenever I coach people, it always starts with just a free phone call to talk about what you're wanting, and whether this would be a good fit to work with coaching. And we can really work together to kind of kickstart and find these small actions and behaviors that are really going to make beautiful changes. Whatever you're doing, I'm wishing you all the best. I'm wishing you well-being and ease, and most of all, gentleness and kindness with yourself as you move through the day. Take care, and I'll see you next week.